And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, could I include a job hunting day on my company's new holiday calendar for this year? And with Marjorie Taylor Greene's private Twitter account permanently suspended, where am I going to get my hot anti-vax takes with terrible grammar? And now, the podcast host who never gets a word or link wrong on his Twitter account, Pete Dominic.
Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to the show. Thank you, Pete Co. Very happy to have you here on Monday, the 3rd of January, 2022, as we head into another year of our journey together. I am so glad to be on the ride with you. I just hope it doesn't go backwards, because that's the only time I really get nauseous. So as we look ahead at 2022 and all that it holds, I'm very excited to be beginning it here with you on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining me here on this daily program. To think that I do it every day and all that goes into it, I can't do it without your support. Very excited to have and make new friends this year. That's really the thing I'm looking most forward to, meeting new people. I love meeting new people, and I have met so many through this podcast, and you've met each other. So become a part of it, support it, sign up right now. Go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Joining me today on episode 510, I've got the most respected bioethicist in the country. Who decides such things? I do. Well, he's definitely one of them. It's Dr. Arthur Caplan of NYU. We covered a lot of ground in our conversation. I think you're going to learn a lot and get a great perspective, as always, from Dr. Caplan. And then, because it's Monday, and almost every Monday, I'm joined by writer and activist, the hilarious and brilliant Maura Quint. She and I hooked up last night over the StreamYard link. That's the video chat service I use, by the way, in case you're wondering. Had a great talk, as always, so that is coming up as well. Also, this week, I am scheduled to talk with Dr. Aaron Carroll, hopefully Dr. Peter Hotez. I already talked with Peter Coyote, and I'll post that, I think, tomorrow. Just an amazing conversation. A lot of people wanted to get the legend back on, and I caught up with him on New Year's Day. Also, one of the Capitol police officers who you may be familiar with, he testified at Congress. The big black guy, Harry Dunn. That one. I mean, there's 4 of them. What do you want me to say? There was the white guy, there was the Hispanic guy, there was the big black guy, and then who was the other one? Anyway, Harry Dunn, I have connected with thanks to a listener. Scheduled to talk with him for the first time today, actually. I'll bring that to you as well this week. Who else would you like to hear? Professor Claire Potter, I know, is scheduled to join me, but I'm always excited to know who you want to hear from this week. What thinker, what comedian, what scholar, journalist, academic, activist, or maybe it's you. I had great conversations with listeners that I'm going to be sharing as well, I think, this week. So that is what's coming up. But now, what has happened over the last 24, or because it's Monday, the last 48, or because it's the beginning of the year, a new year, and January, we can talk about what to expect. And I guess over the weekend, in terms of what I saw in media, it was overwhelmingly focused on COVID because of the spiking Omicron variant. Actually, just spoke with my buddy. I won't say his name because he hasn't gone public, but good friend of mine who was telling me that he's got COVID. Everybody's got COVID. Everybody's going to get COVID. That seems to be the consensus. I think that's what Dr. Caplan says in my conversation with him. What are you hearing? What are you watching? So that's the one main story. And then I think a lot of the Sunday shows we're talking this week, looking ahead of the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. That great time of year, we're always going to have to remember, a day that will live on in infamy to a little over half of us, I guess. So a pandemic and an insurrection are the two big stories. At least we're not in a war, or one isn't starting in Russia and Ukraine this month. What my producer is telling me, fake producer Keith said it looks like there might be actually a war starting this month. So a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. And we will talk about the news here in this segment each day if you want. Or you can always skip ahead to the conversations. I'm here to give you a wide selection of an audio-formatted, pleasurable, informational, at times entertaining, and hopefully life-enhancing conversations. Okay, I'll stop waxing poetic and give you the information that you're here for this wonderful news segment. I'll now aggregate every single shit ton of headlines in
COVID news.
That's right, COVID-related news and headlines. Here we go. The CDC is considering COVID test requirement as part of isolation recommendation. 91 cruise ships are now under CDC investigation following outbreaks. Rapid test companies are lobbying now for Medicare coverage. The FAA is warning travelers of additional canceled flights amid the Omicron surge. Trump's Surgeon General is slamming the new CDC guidelines on isolation. In sports, the NBA has cut isolation time for some players who test positive. And Omicron is threatening the New Year's gym surge. Fitness clubs were making a comeback, and now they need help and money quickly because no one's going to the gym at this point. Federal court denying Oklahoma's attempt to block Pentagon vaccine mandate. Washington, D.C. has the highest rate of infection in the U.S. as of Sunday night. South Africa has eased COVID restrictions, saying the Omicron peak has passed. That's what hopefully we have to look forward to. Israel has approved the fourth COVID vaccine dose for the immunocompromised. And, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene's Twitter account was permanently suspended for COVID misinformation. I get into that with Maura Quint, but I think that main headline there, that Omicron colliding with the New Year's resolutions of so many people that are going to join gyms and fitness studios, workout facilities, and now there is potential reverse on that momentum at the worst possible time, January, when everybody goes and buys their gym memberships and then stops using them in February, of course. Let's see, what else? Thousands are protesting in the Netherlands against virus measures despite a ban on demonstrations there. The Dutch are pissed, at least some of them. A lot of people focused on a new study suggesting Omicron symptoms are more mild due to less lung damage. And what about this hero? A Michigan school teacher named Marissa Fateo was flying from Chicago to Switzerland with a layover in Iceland to celebrate Christmas with her family. When about an hour or so into the flight, just all of a sudden, she said that she had this severe sore throat. She was on CNN talking about this, and she then voluntarily isolated in an airplane bathroom for hours after she tested positive for COVID-19 on the Iceland Air flight and posted TikTok videos of her experience that's now been viewed over 4 million times. I guess that's one way to go viral. And now let's get to some of the audio from some of the Sunday shows. Let's start with the governor of Maryland, Republican Larry Hogan. He was on CNN's State of the Union warning about where we're headed in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Sped up the graduation of our nursing students so they can get out early and get out to help. We've called up the Maryland National Guard, and we're continuing to take actions every day, nearly everything that anyone can think of to help us get through this. Look, we believe that the next 4 to 6 weeks are really going to be a terrible point in this crisis, and it's potentially going to be the worst part of the whole 2-year fight. And we're going to take and continue to take every action we possibly can to help our hospitals, our nursing homes, and to keep people safe. Our focus is what it's always been since last year.
All right, we go from the governor of Maryland to the Secretary of Education, Secretary Miguel Cardona, who was on CBS's Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, who asked him about schools. There's a big question, obviously, for parents, for students, for teachers, administrators. What is going to happen with schools during this Omicron spike?
You told me back in November that there is no excuse for schools to be anything but in person. Do you stand by that statement now?
I know we've had an Omicron surge, but I still believe very firmly and very passionately, not only as an educator but as a parent, that our students belong in the classroom and we can do it safely. We have better tools than we had in the past to get it done. We know what works, and I believe even with Omicron, our default should be in-person learning for all students across the country.
Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, my heart goes out to those of you that are going to have to really struggle if you have issues with school or with daycare. I know how stressful that can be, and I'd love to hear from you and whatever your experience is. You can always call the hotline, by the way, and share what, if you just want to vent about how COVID or anything else is affecting you. 209-STAND-UP is the phone number for the Stand Up with Pete Dominick voicemail if you ever just want to leave a message about what's going on in your neck of the woods. A stand-up correspondent, if you will. Well, let's head back to CNN, where Dana Bash, hosting State of the Union, had Dr. Anthony Fauci on and asked him this key question. She always asks great questions to the scientists that she's speaking with.
Right. Okay, so what you describe is hospitals that we're already seeing overwhelmed, facing staff shortages in particular, airlines canceling thousands of flights. The FAA is warning travelers to expect even more. In New York, subway services are reduced because of the surge there. So should Americans be preparing for major societal disruptions in the coming weeks? And what will that look like?
Well, certainly, when I say major disruptions, you are certainly going to see stresses on the system, and the system being people with any kind of jobs, Dana, but particularly with critical jobs to keep society functioning normally. We already know that there are reports from fire departments, from police departments in different cities that there are 10, 20, 25, and sometimes 30% of the people are ill. That's something that we're going to need to be concerned about, because we want to make sure that we don't have such an impact on society that there really is a disruption. I hope that doesn't happen. What the CDC is trying to do is trying to get a position where, in fact, when people are without symptoms who are infected, that you can get them back to work a little bit earlier than the 10-day, perhaps at 5 days if they remain symptomatic, remain without symptoms, that is, that can go back into society.
All right, Dr. Fauci on CNN with Dana Bash, and more in that 10-minute interview if you want to watch that show. State of the Union on CNN. Now, apparently, the HHS, Health and Human Services Agency of the federal government, teamed up with college football coaches to make this 30-second PSA about Omicron and getting your vaccines and boosters. Here it is.
This is football. East versus West.
Best versus best.
We're rivals on the field, but off it, we face a common opponent.
COVID. And now Omicron
is lining up for a blitz.
We won't stop fighting until we win.
COVID vaccines and boosters are our best defense. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, now's the time. If you're 16 or over and vaccinated, stay in the game with a booster.
Omicron is lining up with the blitz, so stay in the game with a booster, everybody. Hey, whatever it takes. I'm for anybody making a PSA, any leader where you are influenced somehow, people trust you, you put your name, your voice, your face on the line, and you say what those guys just said. If that picks off a few young college students or fans, I am for it. Let's go. Let's have everybody join the effort. Make all the PSAs you can. I'll play them on my podcast. You should play them on yours. Do you have a podcast? You don't? Everybody has a podcast. Anyway, let me know if you want one. Okay, well, that is your
COVID news.
And now I want to get to the other big story that a lot of folks were focused on in media over the weekend and will be all week. Because all this week there's going to be a lot of talk about last year's insurrection at the Capitol, which will be 1 year from Thursday this week. Lots of media focused on that. I'll be talking to Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn later today, which I'm very excited to do. But the Sunday shows were very focused on it, and I think that the most important person that I've heard about, first in reading Barton Geldman's piece at The Atlantic, he was on, I think, Face the Nation on CBS, but Robert Pape's study at University of Chicago on who was at the insurrection, basically a look at the over 700 folks that have been arrested. Really comprehensive study. I've read a lot about it, heard a lot about it, and he was on to talk about it this Sunday. I highly recommend that piece by Barton Geldman in The Atlantic titled How Donald Trump Could Subvert the 2024 Election. He talks a lot about Pape's work, but here is Robert Pape on Face the Nation, which I also recommend you watch the whole interview. But one of the questions was, where did the Capitol attackers get their information from? Here is Professor Pape, University of Chicago, on CBS's Face the Nation.
So if these people believe in what they were doing, who were they getting their information from? How could they truly put everything on the line and carry out this violence? Like, who is telling them what to do?
Well, we can see their media consumption from surveys that we've done after our studies of who broke into the Capitol. We find that fully 21 million people believe two radical beliefs in America today. One, that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president, and two, that the use of force to restore Donald Trump to the presidency is justified. And their media sources of those 21 million, they come from 42% of the 21 million. Their main media sources, Fox News, Newsmax, One America, that is mainstream conservative news. Their second most prominent news source is actually liberal and centrist media like CNN, NPR, CBS. And you might say, well, how could that be? It's because often when people watch ideas they disagree with, that makes them angry. Only 10% of the 21 million are getting their news mainly from right-wing social media like Gab or Telegram.
Yeah, I got to get this guy on. I want to reach out to him right now. But he had a whole team of researchers at the University of Chicago. And let's play one more clip from Face the Nation on the social makeup of the January 6th Capitol attackers.
We want to take a closer look now at the 725 people who've been charged for their roles in the attack on the Capitol. Who are these individuals, and what can we learn from their backgrounds that can help us understand the political violence that we saw that day on January 6th? Joining us now is Professor Robert Pape of the University of Chicago. Professor, I know you've studied insurgencies in war zones. You're working with the Pentagon now. I mean, you're looking at what is happening in the United States. And one of the things that was chilling to me was that you found the majority of those who attacked were not affiliated with any organized militia. They were everyday people.
Exactly right, Margaret. What we're seeing is a movement that is a mainstream movement, not simply confined to fringe elements. And this is important because we're so used to thinking of right-wing extremism, or really extremism in general, as part of the fringe. They're just a tiny fraction of America, less than 1%. And they come from people that are economically destitute, many often unemployed. Well, that's not what our studies of the January 6th, those who broke into the Capitol on January 6th show, or our studies of the insurrectionist sentiments in the country.
All right, that clip somehow cut off at CBS's own Twitter page, but you get the idea. I'll try to get him on, but watch that interview at Face the Nation at CBS, and also read that Barton Gelman piece. So yeah, the January 6th Commission is going to kick back up and start doing public hearings again. So Adam Schiff was on the Sunday show. So was the chairman, Benny Johnson. But boy, I saw him on 2 interviews, and not a great communicator on these types of programs. Maybe he's really good at being chairman, but I wasn't very impressed. However, Adam Schiff, I thought, did a good job on Face the Nation. Here he is talking about what more could have been done to protect the Capitol last year. Because you have oversight in your Intelligence Committee role, I want to know to what degree you think this was an intelligence failure. Was there just a failure of imagination in terms of too much focus on militias and organized groups versus sort of a diffused threat of political violence? Why was this missed?
You know, I think that in part is an intelligence failure. That is the failure to see all the evidence that was out there to be seen of the propensity for violence that day, a lot of it on social media. Now, there are answers for why the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security failed to see it as clearly as they should have, and we're looking into that. But we shouldn't be distracted from the fact that, yes, while there were things that could and should have been done to protect the Capitol that day, the primary lever, instrument, the cause of that violence was the promulgation of a big lie by the former president. As his supporters said, who came and attacked the Capitol that day, they felt like they were following the president's instructions. So it's important to that we don't lose sight of the real motivating cause here, and not just focus on the security of the building. It's also vital we understand that this was an attack inspired by the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, inspired by the commander-in-chief, Adam Schiff. And guess who else said that? It was Liz Cheney, who was also on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. She is the Republican vice chair of the January 6th committee. One of the things that we've seen in CBS polling is that there is just a hard percentage of the population that believes what the former president is claiming. 8 million people believe in violence to restore him to office. 7 out of 10 Republicans still believe President Biden's illegitimate. 66% believe there was widespread voter fraud. So these numbers are pretty hard here. Why hasn't this conviction abated within your party?
Look, I think that we're in a situation where people have got to understand the danger of President Trump and the danger that he posed on that day. You know, if you think, Margaret, he could have simply walked a few feet to the White House briefing room. He could have gone immediately on live television and asked his supporters to stop what was happening, asked them to go home. He failed to do that. He instead, we know, had the motivation. At the same time the violent assault was happening, he's watching television. He's also calling at least one senator urging delay of the electoral vote. So this is a man who has demonstrated that he is at war with the rule of law. He's demonstrated that he's willing to blow through every guardrail of democracy. And he can never be anywhere near the Oval Office again. He's demonstrated a complete lack of fitness for office. I think one of the really important things that our committee has to do is lay these facts out for the American people so that they really have a sense of the truth of what happened that day, and so that they inform us in terms of our legislative activity going forward.
All right, Liz Cheney not pulling her punches with Donald Trump and hasn't been for a long time. So there you go. That is where much of the focus of the media is on COVID and January 6th this week. And I just want to mention one thing I saw over at Politico, aggregated a few different polls about here on the one-year anniversary of January 6th, about how the siege on the Capitol has affected American politics. And it's not good. Roughly 4 in 10 Republicans and independents say that violent action against the government is sometimes justified, according to a shocking, startling new poll over from Washington Post University of Maryland. A new CBS YouGov poll finds that 68% of respondents see the January 6 attacks as a, quote, harbinger of increasing political violence, not an isolated incident. And there is 12% of the country and a fifth of Trump's 2020 voters that want Trump to fight to retake the presidency right now, before the election. A third of the people within that 12% say he should use force if necessary. Well, that only amounts to 4% of the population. It still translates into millions of Americans effectively willing to see a forceful change in the executive branch of the government. Among Democrats, 85% call the riot an insurrection in which people were, quote, trying to overthrow the government. However, among Republicans, GOP voters were more likely to say that the rioters were motivated by, quote, defending freedom, 56%, and, quote, patriotism, 47%. And over 3/5 of those surveyed backed the January 6th committee, and 2/3 said it was important that the federal government probe the events surrounding the attack on the Capitol. So it would seem that the majority of us are living on Earth 1, but Earth 2 seems to be gaining a lot of new followers and fans. Get active, get local, pay attention, or our future and our kids' future can slip away real easy. And today's viral clip, which is a new segment I'm introducing here on Stand Up, where I find a clip that a lot of people are watching and talking about. I mean, I might never do it again, you know me. I mean, I suppose if there were a certain jingle and people helped me find that clip. Anyway, today's viral news clip comes from reporter and anchor, a 9-time Emmy and 4-time National Maura and Peabody Award-winning reporter at KSDK News, the NBC affiliate in St. Louis, Channel 5. Her name is Michelle Lee, on Twitter at Michelle Lee TV. And apparently she said something during her broadcast about how on New Year's Eve there is some kind of New Year's Day traditional Korean thing to eat, dumplings. She mentioned that on the broadcast. And apparently a listener called, or a viewer called, and left a very angry and super racist and very ignorant voicemail for her. She plays it while sitting there, like taping herself listening to it. And it's just brilliant the way that she handles this. But it is sad that someone would say, well, this, after seeing that local news broadcast where an Asian American woman, Michelle Lee, made some comment about a ethnic tradition.
Hi, this evening your Asian anchor mentioned something about being Asian and Asian people eat dumplings on New Year's Day, and kind of take offense to that, because what if one of your white anchors said, well, white people eat this on New Year's Day? I don't think it was appropriate that she said that. And she was being very Asian, and I don't know. She can keep her Korean to herself. All right, sorry. It's annoying. Because if a white person would say that, they would get fired. So say something about what white people eat. So, all right, thank you.
Wow. So many reactions, so many things to say. I want to talk about that with folks at the Hangout this week. I'd love to get, my instant reaction was, well, I had so many. First of all, the idea that the woman would call in and think, it seems like she thinks that she has a really great point and a great argument. But of course, she doesn't. I mean, people all the time say things about their ethnic heritage and why they do whatever they do. Certainly when it comes to food, it's like the most unoriginal. It's almost like forced at this point. Oh, yeah, I'm German, and so we do schnitzels in the morning. Oh, I'm Italian, so we have eggplant in the afternoon on this holiday. Oh, I'm Swedish or Japanese or whatever, and this is what we eat on this holiday is not a weird thing, and it's what makes America great, of course. But this lady was super annoyed at Michelle Lee, and I think it's about something more than just that she likes dumplings. I bet you Michelle, she should have so many ideas. Michelle Lee has to connect with this woman and have dumplings with her or do something, quote, very Asian with her and enlighten her and make friends. It'll be a great bit, and I hope that she does it. I hope she's listening. All right, well, that's all the clips I've got for you. I do have a lot more in the headlines. That's why we have one more news section, rapid fire headlines. Everything else I've seen I want to share. It's the News Dump with a brand new jingle by Pete Coe. News Dump jingle written by Phil Round.
Bearing a Virginia tree showing off his rump. They've closed the road for viewing on today's News Dump.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. I mean, I love a collaboration anytime between talented musicians like Phil Round in Wyoming and Pete Coe in San Francisco. But to take the news story that I mentioned about those bears that closed down the road, you guys, I say bravo, well done. I love it. Keep it coming. Now, what else have we on today's News Dump? Of course, everybody knows at this point that the legend Betty White died on New Year's Eve. I talked about that a little bit with Maura Quint. Great to go down the rabbit hole watching some of her old clips over the weekend. That's what I did, at least. Such a talented and thoughtful, hilarious human being. Late Senator Harry Reid will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda next week. The Nevada Democrat served as majority leader during a 30-year career in the Senate. The leaders of Congress said in a statement Sunday night that ceremonies honoring Reid at the Capitol will take place on January 12th. The Powerball lottery has jumped to over $522 million, and you know what that means? It means you're going to think about getting a ticket, but you'll probably forget, and even if you do, you'll regret it because you lost. Am I projecting too much? New York City has a new mayor. Eric Adams rode the subway to work on his first day as New York City mayor. He was on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And I think he's gonna have a tough time. He's in a tough situation, as is any mayor of such a giant city. Wish him the best, but we are prepared for the worst, especially when it comes to policing. I'm going to try to talk with Scott Hackinger this week about him and what he is concerned with this new mayor and crime in New York City. Whole bunch of new laws passed because it's January 1st, so a bunch of new laws in effect. You got minimum wage increases starting Saturday. 20 states saw a rise in their minimum wage take effect. Also starting Saturday, the No Surprises Act will go into effect that bans the surprise medical bills. That's a really important issue that Congress passed, and we should give the government credit for that. The federal ban was approved by Congress in late 2020, prohibits most unexpected medical charges from out-of-network providers, and will apply to about 10 million bills a year, according to federal estimates. You got new school curriculums that will take over, and certainly we are fighting for that. And at my own school district, I hope you are as well. A new regulation passed in 2018 that outlawed the use of gas-powered leaf blowers is going to take effect for residents in Washington, D.C. You also have marijuana laws and many others. Always a good thing to learn about what's going on in your district, in your state, in your town. I love this story. This is a good story, for real. There once was a small fish called a tequila splitfin that swam in a river in western Mexico, but it disappeared toward the end of the 20th century. But now scientists and residents have achieved the return of the species extinct in nature, but conserved in captivity to its native habitat. You got that? That's amazing. Its success is now intertwined with the community's identity and being touted internationally, as it should be. Wow, that is an amazing story. Read more about it from Maria Verza at the Associated Press. Also starting Saturday, food with altered DNA sold in the U.S. that was previously labeled as genetically engineered or genetically modified organisms will now be labeled as bioengineered. The new directive from the U.S. Department of Agriculture aims to provide uniform language to replace the variety of state labeling policies. Packaging will also include a phone number or QR code consumers can use to access more detailed information. This courtesy of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, who says eating bioengineered foods poses no health risks. And as far as I can tell, that's exactly what the study says. Read about it and watch more about that from Dr. Aaron Carroll's Healthcare Triage. I should ask him that when we talk. We're going to talk later this week. And I mentioned all those new laws that go into effect. I was just looking at the United States, but now I see that Austrians with terminal illness or permanent debilitating condition can now seek help in ending their life. Yeah, a law permitting assisted suicide has taken effect in Austria after completing a series of steps. Now Austrians can receive lethal drugs from a pharmacy, and I had my mind opened way up when I watched an HBO documentary about this and interviewed the director's producers. It's called Right to Die on HBO. But I can't end on that, and there are two hikers, two 19-year-olds, almost died in Oregon when they went hiking and got somehow lost, stuck out there. They wrote SOS in the snow, and a helicopter found them. Two 19-year-old men went missing on a camping trip near Swastika Mountain in Oregon. Wait a second, Swastika Mountain? Hold on. I want to tell you about these two young guys that got rescued by the Coast Guard because it's a great story. And they wrote SOS in the snow and all that Gilligan's Island shit. But Swastika Mountain, I've got more to learn. Congratulations to the Coast Guard and Swastika Mountain, which apparently got its name from a town named after a nearby cattle rancher's swastika-shaped brand years before Nazis claimed the symbol. So, I don't know. Maybe we could rename that mountain something different. All right, well, that is your news dump for Monday, January 3rd, brought to you by GiveWell, It's never a bad time to donate to GiveWell. GiveWell.org/standup right now, where your dollar or more will go the furthest to help save lives and lessen suffering. GiveWell.org/standup now. All right, well, folks, very excited to have Dr. Arthur Caplan whenever I do. He was especially very funny at the end of our interview. He started making fun of my studio. You got to hear it. And I always love talking to him. I fired off questions about schools and cruise ships, vaccines and mandates, and so much more. Dr. Caplan, of course, one of the most respected bioethicists in the country. He's edited or written over 30 books on bioethicism. He's founded the entire department at several universities, including NYU. He's awesome on Twitter, at Arthur Caplan. And the fact that he joins me here on the show is such a tribute to how awesome I am. Sorry. No, it's just so amazing, and I thank him right here at the top. Tweet him at Arthur Kaplan, and here's my conversation where I learned a whole bunch. Always great to get updated on all things bioethics, especially when it comes to a worldwide pandemic. All right, we got him. The legend is here. And before we get into it, just want to, on the record, thank you for your thoughtful voicemail message that you left me. I opened the show with it so that I would look like a big deal. And a lot of people said, wow, you look like a big deal. Thank you, Dr. Caplan.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right. So
that's on that big 500.
Yes, it's really exciting. And, thank you very much for joining me right from the beginning when it started. You really helped, I think, bring legitimacy to this podcast and to me by agreeing to talk with me. And even at one point, welcomed me into your home, which I thought was a real risk, but
it was a risk and it was also a mistake, but there we are.
Yeah. I mean, I got to see a lot of things. There's a lot of, I found out that you, all right, I didn't learn this when I was at your house. This was a picture. I found out that you cover your bushes in the winter.
There you go.
Yeah. I wish I didn't know that.
Trust me, this is not me. This is my wife. The bushes would be dead.
Exactly. All right. Lots to talk about. I feel like maybe the most important thing for people to try to understand that I know that you're good at explaining and certainly suited for is testing. What is why do we need it, and what has been the failure with it?
Biggest failure, past 2 years, not enough testing at home, schools, and workplace. It really is the biggest failure. Trump bet the farm on vaccines. Then after inventing them and screaming that he had invented them, decided to abandon them by telling people, by going silent on them, not telling people to use them, never contradicting the governors and kooks who kept saying, you don't need vaccines or they're dangerous. Biden has kind of continued the vaccine emphasis. If you look at the messaging, it's get vaccinated, get the booster, get vaccinated. But the way you control COVID is not just through vaccination, although vaccination is very important. You want to wear masks, and we all know that. So around people in public places or people who we don't know, smart to put on a mask, reduces contagion. But the big thing is testing. And here's why, Pete. It's very simple. Instead of closing down all of New York City because there's virus around, or my kid's school, or I can't go to the office because somebody there might be positive, but we don't know who because we just got a generic test result that somebody is. You go to home testing and you say you can go where you want. You get more freedom because if you're testing positive at home, stay home. If you're testing positive at home, don't send your kid to school, but let everybody else go. So testing gives you mobility. It gives you freedom. And the other reason testing is going to be important is, I think listeners know too, that there's some new antiviral meds coming. Well, they're great and they're not perfect, but they help.
Yeah.
But you got to take them in the first 5 days that you're positive. Who's going to know in the first 5 days that they're positive? Relatively few people, because they're not going to realize they've got it until they get symptoms. That's probably 5 days in. The antivirals don't work after 5 days. You got to get there early. So testing becomes key to the smart use of these new, soon to come out in the next couple of weeks, antiviral drugs. There's a ton of reasons to be testing. Keep your doctor's office going. Cut the appointment at the dentist if you know you're positive. You just postpone. But just not having any testing and running around saying, I think I got this. I don't know. Is it the flu? Is it a cold? I don't think you're sick, kid. Go to school because I got to get to work. That is just not the way to manage this.
It's the point of testing providing mobility and freedom and the pursuit of, almost whatever you want, leisure for work to make money. It seemingly is the point. It's as one I don't think I hear communicated and argued as well. But just real quick, I do have to ask, and I know the answer to this, but I want you to explain it. Does it work? I mean, does the testing work? Do the tests work? You explain why they're important and what they do to our lives, what it means for our lives and to control the virus. But, do they work? We hear things about, this test doesn't work, or if it's not used right or applied right in certain areas, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, look, Biden said he was going to make available 500 million, that's with an M, tests. But when you look at the tests, they say use the home test kits 2 times over 24 hours. Confirm it, because they know they're not perfect, those home test kits. That means we'll actually have 250 million tests. How many of us are there? I don't know, 250 million, 300 million? That's one test. Each of us get one test? That's not a plan. So a home test kits, you got to use 2 times. Test it, retest it. That's why they sell them in 2s. Are they perfect? No, but if you retest a positive result, 24 hours later, still positive, stay home. The real gold standard is these PCR tests. Doesn't matter what they are. It's the ones that go to the lab. They're genetically checking to see, do you have the virus? Which strain is it? That's what the CDC reports on numbers. So 2 problems. One, the home test kit, you got to do 2 times. So we don't have nearly enough tests. I mean, when I saw this number come out, I think State of Connecticut, where I am, said they were trying to get a hold of 3 million tests. There's 4 million residents. You got to use 2 for each person. It's not even testing us once. But I trust them as long as you get the 2 test sequence. If it's wrong, it's only a little bit wrong. Stay home. It's like 96% accurate if after the 2 tests run. Gold standard ones send off to the lab. Well, they're great. I'm still talking to people who are waiting for their lab results, I think, from Christmas Day.
Oh, God.
So that isn't going to work.
So there aren't enough tests, and even, I mean, basically, it seems like people should be incentivized, should want to buy and have tests permanently the rest of their lives for anything, for any reason. I mean, if only we bought these, they were available, and we bought them the way we did cases of bottled water. I mean, you would think you go to the Costco or the whatever, and you buy a case of tests, and they last your family a year. That should be something that's available. As long as they have fucking cases of marshmallows, we should have, I mean, anything. You could buy cases of twist ties and anything.
Exactly.
I mean, these can't be that hard to manufacture. What needs to be done
and remember, what did the government do for the vaccines? They subsidized them. So subsidize the tests. Let's make them available for $3 for a case of 24. Let's go. The other problem, by the way, just to get at this, is the only numbers we have on who's infected come from the lab-based tests. If you take a home test kit and they're positive and stay home, who knows that? Not the CDC,
right.
Not the health department. So we're always undercounting who's positive. I see all these bad numbers. Trust me, it's worse right now because we're not reporting. You got a home test kit, you're not going to do the PCR thing. You're just going to stay home. So that undercounts everything that's going on. Testing, I don't know, it's a cluster. It's just awful. I can't believe that we got this far, 2 years into the thing, and people are telling me they can't buy a home test kit at any chain drugstore. The big bulk, suppliers don't have them. The PCR tests take a week. What the hell good is a week? You're already exposed again. You don't know if what you were a week ago matters for what's today's test result for the fancy ones. We blew it. We just blew it.
Well, who has not blown it? Have any states, or more importantly, any countries done a good job that you know of? I don't know if you've been paying attention.
Better supply in Holland. You can still buy them over the counter, $3 a test for 2. I like that. I'm not sure why it's only $3. I don't know, but I know it is. Britain a little better. Yeah, some other countries have done more aggressive testing and test subsidy. So yes, it is better elsewhere. Why we got obsessed over vaccine wars. I mean, that's it. Trump led us that way. Biden kind of picked up on it. Booster, vaccinate. That's our messaging. And how often does somebody stand up and say, test? Well, they don't, because there aren't any.
Right. Well, I mean, it's hopefully that'll change at some point in the future, but people also have to change along with it and get those, go ahead and get those tests and take those tests and then report, their findings, not necessarily to the authorities, but to their workplace at least. And so what about in New York City? I was just in New York City on Christmas Eve because my parents were coming down and we wanted to really put them at risk. And so, so they had testing at every corner. Like they had testing, like little tents with people testing.
Usually the problem there is it's 2 or 3 hours in a line.
Right.
So people walk away. Plus, here's the other great thing, since you did want to put them at risk. Why don't you line up with people who have symptoms and stand next to them for 3 hours?
Well, instead, we just went indoors for a while.
Unmasked and just headed in. Did you go to Broadway with some lousy ventilation?
No, I mean, we mostly were outside. We were in Central Park. It's kind of our tradition, New Year's Eve. Yeah. And we told my parents, of course. My parents have practiced every safe measure, but my dad especially. My mom's a little bit more concerned and responsible potentially. My dad would swim through a river of COVID to get to the girls, his granddaughter. So, yeah, but we did eat in a restaurant, but it was empty and somehow.
I hate to say this. Being cautious is important, but it's for a reason different than what you're thinking, probably. I think everybody's going to catch this. It's so infective. It's like crazy.
Omicron now.
Better that we don't catch it all at once. And so by being cautious, you spread out the pattern of, how fast and who's going to have it so they don't swamp the healthcare system. Good news is, doesn't seem to be as lethal. Bad news is many people, older people, your parents, might still need a little oxygen or a little breathing help, not a ventilator, but just help to get through the roughest part of Omicron. But you don't want them all showing up at the hospital at the same time. So if we can at least mask and be a little cautious, the wave that's coming over us will be a little less intense. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So, but I think all of us are going to get it. If 1 in 4 people in New York, I just saw a number, have it, that's a pretty good chance that the rest of us are going to get it, no matter what we did, right? Unless you dug a survival bunker and stayed in it. I don't see how you'd avoid it.
What if you just hosted a podcast from your shed and didn't talk to your kids who lived inside?
Yeah, well, that might be something they ask you about, but it's probably not going to protect them totally because you'll probably wander out to eat or something.
It gets delivered right in through a chute.
Oh, I see.
I've got
they run away.
Yeah, I've got a special drone delivery service, drops it right on the shed roof. So, but
I thought you might be running a garden on top of the shed at this point. No natural vegetables.
Well, yeah. The gardens are all around. So I would have to leave the shed. I do have gardens, but I would have to leave the shed to get to them. And right now they are completely dead.
Which lets me jump to something else. Don't go hunting right now because even in your area, a third of the deer are testing positive for COVID. And wise guys say to me, well, wait a minute, you do know that this is airborne and the dead if I hunt deer and they're dead, I don't actually breed them. But if you're running around with packs of deer or your dog is, you can transmit it through intense contact. And I keep worrying about things like people who eat the meat, are they going to get something popping up from a dead deer with COVID that gets airborne, as they slaughter or dress the animals and that sort of stuff. So something to keep an eye on. If Pete, where we live, Connecticut, New York, there's a slew of Lyme disease, and the host for it is the deer.
And the point is that they become a reservoir, a host that it can then mutate and transmit back to human beings, which is where some of these start to begin with, it would seem.
Exactly. So we look at the wet markets in China, but other animal reservoirs are around, deer apparently being one of them. I worry, too, even in our meatpacking plants and stuff like that. We keep saying, oh, look at the Chinese. What's that animal, a pangolin or something? Who wants to eat that? I don't know, some weird, strange animals they have in the fresh markets where they kill them right there. Anybody wandered into some of our meat plants and worried what's blowing around in the air there from unhygienic slaughter practices here? It ain't pretty. Just not pretty.
So a bunch of other things I wanted to try to get to, but if we have time, just let me know when you get a jump.
And by the way, enjoy your New Year's dinner after that.
Enjoy your venison jerky.
Yes, exactly.
Your freshly slaughtered venison. Fourth shot, hearing about a fourth shot. Israel always seems to be ahead of us on this. And I mean, that's pretty clear requirement for the mRNA virus, probably a little ways down the road.
100% certain. I don't know when, but let's explain this one. So we needed to get a vaccine fast, pre-vaccine days, because too many people were dying of the original COVID. So they ran a study. They gave people a shot and then waited 2 or 3 weeks and gave another shot and saw pretty good immunity and said, approve it, looks safe, looks like it's working. A huge number of vaccines, hepatitis, polio, HPV, are 3-shot vaccines. You get one another month, and then you wait 6 months and get the third. We didn't do that test because we needed to get something right away. I'm not knocking it. Made sense. But we never tested the right interval. We didn't test like, does it work better 1 shot, 6 months, 1 year? So we're finding out after 2 shots, the thing fades. Some people say, we'll get a booster. It isn't a booster. It's finishing the first round of shots. It's the regular series. Yeah, you need to get a third shot. But when you talk about boosters, it sounds like, well, I ate the meal, so I don't know if I want dessert, the booster being the dessert. It's like, no. It's all part of the same main course. It's a 3-shot vaccine. And I have no doubt, just like flu vaccine, you're going to have to get another one down the road. Why people freak out about this so much is beyond me. How many people do you know that you and I both know that take 6 pills every day?
It's always a good point to make, but they will say all of these pills I take, including my linoleum oil essential flour pill, is been tested for long-term effects, and this virus has not. And I, sir, do not want to grow a tail out of my asshole.
Well, let's put it this way. Your linoleum linseed oil thing got tested by the guy who's selling it to you. That's the test there. The rest of them were tested. Your statin or your blood pressure meds but we all know they have risks. They're riskier than the vaccines. It's like, come on. So,
but we know the risks. I'll push back one more time because I constantly hear this. We know the risks of those. We just don't know the risks, and which is why you ducked my point about growing a tail.
Yeah. Well, here's another little fact about mRNA vaccines. After about a year, maybe a year and a half, the body clears them out completely. They're not there. They won't impact you. That's why you got to get another shot. So this whole idea that you take the vaccine and it lingers in you, slowly telling your DNA, make a tail, make sure you grow ears and a tail. It's cleared. It's the body's natural immune system kills off the stuff that's in there that fights COVID. That's why I got to give you some more. So I wouldn't worry about a tail. Here's what I would worry about. You want to worry about long-term effects? Worry about long-haul COVID.
Right. We know already that since COVID arrived at our doorstep, we all know someone who has suffered from some kind of, whether it be minimal but still really shitty to something very bad. We definitely know. We don't know quite how they all are and how they affect us differently, but that we know.
Right. And so if I'm looking at my young kid and I'm thinking 13, do I want to give him a booster versus 13 and risk long haul COVID for a lifetime? I'm betting on the booster to give me more protection for my kid than I am letting them get infected and then seeing what the hell happens 20 years from now.
I was surprised to see you on CNBC as a spokesman for Royal Caribbean. Are they paying you?
So they couldn't pay me enough to get on one of those boats. I couldn't shut the damn thing down.
I'm bioethicist Art Kaplan. Holds up a drink, and then they keep rolling. We find out he was not on a cruise ship because he's too smart to go on a cruise ship, but he'll sell them.
Actually, perhaps they give me a privileged cruise, just me and a few intimates.
Well, hold on. I realize I'm offending. Someone emailed me and criticized me. I made a pithy joke about folks who are going on cruises right now, and she said we went on a cruise. It was super safe, and you're making people. I'm insulting people, I guess, by saying this. So let me be serious with you and give me the thoughtful comment about cruises.
Cruises have had a long-term problem with something called norovirus.
Yeah.
It just gets into the boat and they can't get the damn thing out.
Stomach.
Sailing around with a bunch of old people in close quarters where the disease is airborne. I think there were 4 ships this week that had to pull back into the U.S. because they couldn't dock because they had rampant COVID outbreaks. We saw them before. By the way, we saw them on U.S. Navy vessels. That's why the armed services is crazy to get everybody vaccinated. You may remember they were pulling out aircraft carriers, destroyers, because they had big COVID outbreaks. Bad place to be, boat, with a lot of people, particularly a lot of old people. Not too sorry, but that's who tends to do a lot of cruising. It's just not safe. If I was Biden, I'd say let's shut that down for a while.
Are schools a bad place? Are airplane travel a bad place? A lot of talk about both of those right now. A lot of concerned parents. My only argument on my local Facebook page, where people are a lot of people are nuts and anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists, I just said, listen, stop. If teachers are ill, they're not going to come to school. They're not going to teach remotely. They don't feel good. It's not even. They're boosted. I'm not talking. I'm saying they're going to call in sick. There's just not going to be enough teachers, and so you're not going to send your kids because there's no teachers there. Is it more complex than that?
Yeah. Look, a lot of the airlines are saying they can't run their flights because the crews are out, and people are saying, but I thought you all vaccinated. And a number of the airlines, United, for example, did vaccinate 2 shots. They're not talking about boosters. We know they're still going to get sick and they stay home. So is the airplane particularly dangerous? Well, if everybody really masks and the crews are vaccinated, I would put a vaccination policy in for travel in the U.S. too and say you can't get on the plane unless you're at least 2 shots, preferably 3. I don't think it's so unsafe. You're not on there a long time. It's not like a boat. We were on there for 14 days,
right?
Eating meals together and everything. But the real danger is school. And I think what's going to happen to school is what you said, Pete. Teachers are going to start to not show up. Janitors are going to sick out. They're going to get sick and they're not going to go to work. They don't feel good. nor do you want them to go to work if they're infectious. I think parents are going to try to get back to work, send in the kids, some of whom will be infected because the infection rate's so high. And I think we're going to see a lot of school closures, which we could have avoided. We had more tests.
Exactly. Back to the testing issue. And, well, what else? There was one more thing. Flights, planes, cruise ships. I guess I just want to ask you if you agree with are most epidemiologists kind of in agreement on the forecast. I'm talking to you on New Year's Eve, and the line in New York is straight up. We are on our way up on this curve, and straight up like we haven't seen before. I heard Osterholm, who seems to be pretty good, say like something like 2 to 8 weeks. We're talking about Omicron throughout the country, which is all red with COVID right now, probably mostly that variant, although hard to know. And are we talking about it through January, February?
I'm going to say first week February in there. So the wave comes, a lot of people get infected. That makes it harder for the virus to jump around to other people because pretty soon a lot of people have it. And so I think we'll see what seems to be going on in South Africa. Big spike, huge outbreak, starting to quiet down after about 6 weeks. So we're still on the upside of the curve. I would expect we got another month anyway to run through this thing before both vaccination and natural immunity due to people getting sick sort of tune the thing down. So still got some misery. For 2022, we can still push testing. Let's demand it. Let's push for it. Local, state, federal, everywhere. Let's make sure they have enough of those antiviral drugs that they're affordable. I keep seeing Merck saying, well, I got the antiviral drug. Shouldn't cost more than $80,000, $90,000 a dose. It's like, no, we can't have that. We got to have easy, affordable access to this stuff. Right now, you can only get it by prescription. Other thing I would say for 2022 in terms of really getting on the ball with this stuff, let's start to really push the full shot series 3 and start to prepare people. They're going to get a shot every year like the flu. Now, a lot of people don't get the flu shot, but you should. And it's going to be an annual shot. I have no doubt about that. You heard it here first, but it has every appearance of being an annual shot.
I just realized there's one really important, probably the most important question I want to ask you, and then I forgot. So if you wouldn't mind, it's the CDC communication. What do you think of it? Did they screw up? Was it nuanced? Is it just like a very hard thing to communicate? Is it that we're just trying to adapt differently and people? Because I'm very concerned that they screwed up and that they're going to lose credibility, and that's bad.
Well, I think they screwed up in terms of this, how long you have to quarantine thing. So they had a recommendation, if you're positive, stay home 10 days. Then they said, nope, never mind, stay home 5 days. They could have admitted, here's what's going on. 5 days is worse in terms of guaranteeing no spread than 10 days. And we don't really have data that says 5 days is enough, but 5 days isn't horrible. But what we're doing is we're going to 5 days because we don't want to shut everything down. If there's so many people infected, there's going to be no restaurant, no grocery store, no nothing, because everybody will be home quarantining for 10 days. I just called I had an electrical problem here, called the electrician, turned positive yesterday. He's not coming out for 5 days. If it was 10, we'd have this problem. Nobody's going to be out. So be honest. You're making a trade-off. That happens. That's life. You're going to get a little less protection for a little more economy. But they didn't do it. They just said, oh, no, 5 days is great. You just can't do it that way. I think they mismessaged. I think it is hard because we learn more about Omicron as time goes on, and they got to adjust the message. We'll talk about this next year, but I think communication generally about this whole thing has not been great. CDC hasn't been outstanding either with Trump or with Biden. I don't think we've had great mainstream media, social media coverage on things. And the messaging to try and turn around the doubters and the fearful stinks. I guess, you can put scientists on, the same guys, by the way, every 10 minutes and announce, vaccines are safe. It's not working. Got to come up with something else. Need different messaging.
Yeah. I can't believe how many epidemiologists not only do I follow and talk to, but like they're kind of celebrities
because
they seem to be the most the best people to go to try to help us with our uncertainty about a thing, but yet they can't ever be certain themselves, and people lose patience with them.
Plus, I think the messaging, you tell me, you're the radio guy, podcast guy, I think people respond better to stories than they do numbers. So I want more stories in my messaging. I want, grandma got sick, this is what happened, she was on oxygen for 3 days, it sucked. No, we couldn't, tell me stories.
Where I found exactly what you're saying is on social media, specifically Twitter, where you're awesome and always active, where people, where you do have those threads where they say, so listen to what happened. It's just hard to vet those people out because the same kind of thread obviously could be some anti-vaxxer saying, well, and that anecdote goes viral as well. So it's just not an appropriate way to message. I agree with you. All right. Well, I'll let you go. I always appreciate it. What kind of guy are you? Are you the kind of guy that has an electric problem in his home? What kind of homeowner are you? And he checks that electric problem himself, or?
No, I send my nephew who lives with me. I say, put on some rubber gloves, get down the basement. Here's a flashlight. Go fix this thing. Speaking of electrical, what is that phony fireplace running behind your back I see? Don't you have some kind of light show going on there? Isn't that fireplace theater?
I cannot believe you just called me out and to my whole audience.
Look at it. Look at it. That's straight from BJ's.
This not only have you offended my sensibilities, this was sent to me for free by a listener.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And so
on the take too, huh? On the take too.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Big electric phony fireplace. I'm going to do a live read. I do have to let you go because you just reminded me. I have to do a live read for my fake flames. So we'll be right back with Art Kaplan. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes, the most respected bioethicist in the country who joins me almost every month to go through several issues, and that is of great value to me, and I know to you. Thank you, Arthur Kaplan, Dr. Arthur Caplan at NYU, and go thank him for joining me. Always means such a difference. At Arthur Kaplan, if you're on Twitter. If you're not, go make a Twitter account just to say hi and thank the folks who join here regularly. Just one of many ways you can support the show. And now it's time to get to my second guest who joins me almost every Monday right here on Stand Up. She is a writer, an activist, a brilliant and hilarious person on Twitter at Behind Your Back. She's currently the campaign manager for Americans for Tax Fairness. AmericansForTaxFairness.org, at Behind Your Back on Twitter. Go follow her. And here we go. It's time for Maura Mondays with Maura Quint. And a great jingle for Maura written by Pete Coe at Pete Coe VO for all your jingle needs.
When regressive taxation has gone too far and your Bloody Mary's just not up to par, it's Maura Mondays.
All right, well, there she is, Maura Quint at Behind Your Back. I've just told you all about her, and we love when she joins us on Mondays, especially the first Monday of 2022. I know you are a big New Year's celebration person, so I'm very excited to have you here as the first guest. Is it the first show? I guess, whatever. Hi.
What do you mean, whatever? Well, I was really excited. Yeah, I got this whole build up, and then you're like, or whatever. I don't know.
I know I got all.
You know what? That's New Year's Eve right there. That's what it is. It's like a whole big build up, and then, it doesn't really matter. What's the big deal?
That's all absolutely super fair. I just got in my head. I was like, did I do a show that technically aired? But no, the first was Saturday. We are talking on Monday, the 3rd, or really Sunday, but don't tell anybody. And so here we are at the beginning of 2022 and New Year's Eve, big build up. You were very excited about it. I know you were an annual thing for you, right?
Just black tie all the way, really. Just no matter what. Decked out in sequins, lots of sequins, big on the sequins, always. I do not like New Year's Eve. Don't like it.
Isn't it true that you got really dressed up in like a 20s era dress and then just took a dog out for a walk around midnight? Is that right?
That would have been great. If I had a 20s era dress, I would have done that. But, that is not the the 20s would not have been a good era for me to live in my body. I don't have the right body for that time frame. They like very straight, sort of very, very narrow thin. That was the whole deal. And I didn't work there.
I mean, bone structure is bone structure. I mean, there were all skeletons at all times, weren't there? Is it really a body for an era?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, of course, there were all structures at all times, but like even in our current era, now it's all about having like a really nice butt. I don't fit in here either. I don't know when my time was, but it was probably like 200 years ago. I was probably super hot then, but like I've missed it up till now.
Yeah, my younger one, Jewel, who's 14, she's like working out a lot, and she's like, "Is my butt getting bigger?" I'm like, I don't think that's possible. I think the only way to really make your butt bigger or change the way your body is shaped is to put on weight. Really, I don't think you can like muscle strength your body, do enough squats to really change the shape of your butt dramatically. But I don't know.
I think you can change the shape of it, but then if you want, you do have to like add weight if you're looking for that kind of like bubbly butt thing that is hot right now. No, the moment we turned to butts, I was like, well, I'm out. I'm done. Like, I'm not even going to try anymore. I got nothing.
Well, do you have anything on New Year's? Meaning, like, did you ever what do we think about the run up to the holiday? And then as it seems like with COVID, that just threw a whole separate damper on it, because we thought in the build up, at least this year, we were like, well, at least we won't be able to, at least we'll be able to go to parties and hang out in Times Square, whatever people want to do if they wanted to. But then I was like, no, wet blanket.
Yeah.
COVID blanket.
I have had like a little tiny personal tradition for the last several years, excluding last year, where like my parents take my kids to this sort of children's New Year's where they like do a countdown at 9 p.m. like their community or something. They do this and it's fun, and it's like really it's just the grandparents and grandchildren. It's perfect. And then I have been going out to the same bar that I otherwise never go to, and I go out around like 7 or whenever when my parents take my kids, and I eat dinner at the bar and I sit there and I have a couple drinks, and it is the only time of the year in the area that I live that someone will inevitably come in, sit down at the bar, and I will talk to them, and I will have a really weird conversation. And that has been a fantastic tradition, and I was looking forward to it, and that got spoiled. Everything got canceled.
That you go alone, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's just me. It's just been me.
And you don't do that any other time of year?
I tried one time. I was like, you know what? I'm going to like go to this bar again. And I'm sure, nope, no one came in. No one talked to me. No one talks to me otherwise. Like people don't talk to me at bars anymore. But on New Year's Eve, for whatever reason, maybe it's just the desperation of the last night of the year that everybody's like, God damn it. I'm just anyone. And I'm anyone. I work. So that's it. That's my only shot. That's the only time I got.
Well, don't tell this audience where you're going to be, because I just had a guy subscribe to the podcast and say, amongst other things, he's in love with you. So there's been a few more than a few listeners who have crushes. So I'm just saying, you might, depending on what you want, to give out the address next year. But
I mean, we'll see how this year goes. I don't know. I can't predict where I'm going to be in 364 days, 3 days. I don't know. I can't do the math.
So what did you do?
I hung out with my kids. We did I made a bunch of like little finger foods, and we watched a movie on Netflix, and I was really exhausted, and I was really thinking like, yes, I'm going to go to bed. Screw this. This is great. My kids though were like all in this year. They're like, no, we're staying up till midnight. And they did.
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of like napping while they stayed up.
Fun.
And I told my youngest he could stay up as late as he wanted playing video games, which he's never in his life been able to do. And he took that as a personal challenge. He was just like, and at like 1:30, he went to bed, and I figured, oh, he's finally collapsing. And I only found out the next morning that no, the computer had died, and he just didn't want to go by himself to find the charger.
That's hilarious. He would have kept going had he not had a technical issue.
That's absolutely right. He'd still be playing.
Did you watch anything as someone who has an amazing sense of humor and appreciates humor? To me, honestly, and I think all comedians and humor people with any sense of humor at all despise most of these programs, especially like the the Anderson Cooper, Andy Cohen, no chemistry. This idea that they're going to put two white gay guys who are around the same age together and they're going to have this amazing chemistry is terrible. Kathy Griffin was the only good thing that I think in years that was funny. Like this is not funny is all I'm trying to say.
Are they supposed to be funny? It didn't even occur to me that they were supposed to be funny. You're like kind of blowing my mind right now. Like, are people watching it and laughing?
Well, at least entertaining of some sort. It's just like they think they're just going to go and improv their way into being entertainment. You watch it for 5 minutes. I'm like, this is terrible. What's happening?
Yeah, I think the idea is that it's supposed to be basically like the crackling logs in Christmas. Like it's supposed to be in the background while other things are happening. Right. You're not actually supposed to be like focused in on that.
Okay.
It's just supposed to provide like the establishing shot for your movie that this is in fact New Year's Eve. That's what this party is for. I think that's the only reason that it's supposed to be there.
Not sure what I'm hearing, but it sounds like somebody is a huge Andy Cohen, Anderson Cooper fan.
What? I don't even know who they are. Anderson Cooper? You mean that Vanderbilt kid? No.
You're the one of the last people who still calls him that Vanderbilt kid. All right.
I just want everyone to remember.
Quickly, let's just dispense with the conversation about resolutions and take pressure off people. I mean, I will say I went for my first run in 3 months since I rolled my ankle, and I redesigned the shed here a little bit. New year, new shed.
All right.
So I'm starting some things, a little exercise, a little
it's still bright
little
pink though.
Space
that's
change.
the choice. You're not letting go of the pink. It's gonna be pink forever.
No, I think we'll stay with this color light because it's all I have. But I
like it.
Yeah, maybe it's become part of the the shed whole atmosphere. But do you have anything? Do you do anything? Do you care about it at all? Does the year flipping from 21 to 22 trigger anything for you?
Well, I haven't decided to make any parts of my house sort of a red light district yet, but I am inspired by your shed. So, I mean, that could happen at any moment.
You can change that anytime you want, actually.
I mean, I'll look into that. I kind of go back and forth on the whole New Year's thing. Like, partially, I'm just like, it's just another day. There's putting too much meaning, too much significance on this whole, like, we're going to do it all differently now is, in a way, I think, a way for people to kind of disappoint themselves, basically, because it's too much to think, like, I'm just going to change this all around in this moment.
Yeah.
However, I do like having a moment in time where you reflect upon what you've been through. And, you know, for me, my birthday being at the end of the year, it all kind of melds together, that like year end thing of like, all right, what was this last year like? What was there anything I liked? What did I not like? What do I not want to feel again at the end of the next year? So I have that sort of feeling, which I've struggled with a bunch because I'm not pleased with myself at the end of this year. Not super psyched.
I like the idea of what do I not want to feel like. I think people often do the converse and then make commitments towards that. Like, I want to feel this way. But I think that's smart and thoughtful and more honest in a way. Well, I don't want to feel like this. We can talk about how I want to feel, but I know that I don't want to have this experience, this feeling. That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I'm all for just sort of like trying to get rid of the negatives and assuming that positives will fill in the space where the negatives go. I do well with happiness. I can find joy in happiness, but, you know, it gets overshadowed too much by the negativity.
I feel like you told me you had a good run in the first quarter of 2021 on the happy.
In the middle of 2021, okay. I had a good spot there where I was like doing things that were healthy for me, that made me feel good about myself. And I really stuck with it for like 3 or 4 months of feeling like, yeah, I'm doing things that are good for me. Am I doing everything? No. You know, was I like in the middle of writing a book? No, I didn't get to all the things I wanted to do, but I felt like I was making a progress and I was sort of on the right track. And then just the sort of fall winter hit, and you know, it was like I was climbing up a slide the whole time and then just slid right back down.
Yeah,
so, here we are.
I like that metaphor. I think a lot of people can relate. I certainly can. And I feel like I've got to just work this into almost every conversation in the next few weeks, which is like, yeah, new year, new me, and definitely going to get COVID if I haven't had it recently. Like, I feel like right now, and I just want to know your thoughts on it, certainly me having teenage girls, and I mean, I feel like I'm being told it's inevitable. I've heard the phrase viral blizzard, and this Omicron variant is very contagious, and I'm not that worried. I got my booster. I'll be okay, but I kind of want to get it out of the way before I've got gigs to do or before last week tonight picks back up in February. Like for me, but for other people going back to school, whatever, it's almost like, let me get it now. I feel I'm boosted. I'll be okay. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I actually heard someone say that recently. She just found out like she and her family got it and she felt relieved, and she was surprised she felt relieved because she'd been so worried, and it was just like, great, I'll get through it. I understand that attitude, definitely. Though, like, that's a quitter's attitude is where I'm coming from. Like, I'm going for a perfect record here. I'm gonna beat this thing. This is like knock on, where's the wood? There's some wood. Because that's obviously cursing myself right now. But like, no, I think I can do it. I think I can make it through. I've got the masks. I don't do anything or go anywhere. Like, I live in a place where you can be a little more isolated. I'm not in a city where you have to be kind of bumping up against people. So, well,
if that's the case, I'm the same. But I think the common variable that we have, and maybe it's different with your boys, but is the kids. Like the kids go to school, the kids go elsewhere, and then don't you think you get it from them at some point?
I guess the fact that I don't think I have, or that they've gotten it so far, has given me maybe an unearned sense of optimism, because certainly kids in their school have had it, and like some of their friends have had it. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, like we've dodged it. I keep feeling like we're just at that point in the movie, like right towards the end. And it's just, I made it through all of these crazy obstacles. Like, just need to go just a little bit further.
Well, I feel that way too, but I want to just tweak it a little bit, because it feels, to some extent, it could feel like we're not giving ourselves credit. We've made it this far, and we've been very careful, and that's certainly, we've been fortunate that we don't have to, cut up chickens at a chicken plant or drive a school bus or something for work, because you'd be out there more. But so we've done a good job, and now at the very end we're going to get it. But the truth is, it might be inevitable, and we waited till we were boosted. We waited till we had 3 shots, and and we did a good job. So give ourselves some credit. I guess that's kind of how I'm thinking about it at this point.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we clear a lot of the major hurdles now. Obviously, the bigger concern is for individuals who are not vaccinated, and so certainly now that my kids are vaccinated, I have much less fear. But I still don't want it. Like, I'm not going to, like, did you guys have chicken pox parties? Was that like a thing when you were a kid?
No, I don't think I had. No.
We didn't ever go to one or anything, but I was aware of it. The idea that like parents would be like, all right, just go be around this kid with chicken pox, get it out of the way. Let's just be done. Like, I don't have that feeling for this. Like, there's still a part of me that thinks, it could happen. It could happen. Somebody's got to win the lottery, right?
I'm also just tired of arguing with my teenage daughters who want to hang out with, they have a billion friends. And like Julia on New Year's Eve wanted to have 4 friends sleep over. Ava went to a party, and I'm just done. I couldn't take it anymore. And I've talked to them both about it, the consequences. I mean, we've all been having these conversations and arguments and for almost 3 years now. And, it's, I'm beaten.
Yeah, that I understand.
I can't keep telling them.
I still have a fascist rule over my children because they're younger, so it's a little bit easier.
Sure.
But yeah, if I were in your place with rebellious young upstarts who could drive, it would be much more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, they make out with people, like, that's my daughter Ava, who's almost 17, is a boyfriend. I mean, like, and I shouldn't say anything about his health history, but I mean, like, if they get COVID, I mean, like, she's guaranteed to get it if they hang out. So, it just, at this point, I'm just beaten. I do feel like I just kind of almost want to get it, but at the same time, I'm like you, I don't know. Speaking of movies, though,
have you not offered your daughters the ability to stay up all night playing video games? Because that might do it. From my experience, that works really well.
No, I mean, they don't. Right. Yeah, they'll watch TV. I mean, I think Julia's burnt through all of the rom-coms, so she's watching them for a second time, I think. Speaking of movies, you watched Don't Look Up. Do you have a review for us? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you like those actors? Did you like the casting? What are your thoughts on the new Netflix film that apparently, well, obviously is an allegory for climate change, right?
You saw it too, right?
Twice.
Oh, okay. Was that because you liked it so much?
Well, yes. My brother insisted I watch it. On Christmas Eve, I watched it. And then when my parents on Christmas, the whole family, everybody watched it on Christmas night.
And what'd you think of it?
Loved it.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting to me. I'm actually kind of surprised by that.
Love the casting. Love the comedy. I felt like it had a bunch of different. It just like such a great cultural, commentary on media, on politics, on capitalism, on denial, and I feel like Don't Look Up. They talk about climate change, but really COVID. I mean, when Trump said it's just going to go away one day, is exactly like Don't Look Up. It's the exact same thing. Don't worry about it. There's nothing that we need to do about it. It's not going to be a problem. It's just going to go away. I felt like that was a perfect parallel.
I have a lot of thoughts about Don't Look Up, and I don't want to go off on any sort of crazy rants. I don't think I liked it as much. Well, I mean, first of all, I'd heard so much on Twitter because it's, such a talked about thing in the Twitter world that I'm a part of. Everyone had takes, and there was lots of negative thoughts about it. I went in totally interested and very open-minded about it. It was fine, I think, is what I walked out with. It was fine. It was a fairly forgettable, okay movie. But for me, it definitely was doing what it wanted in terms of trying to make this, satire very clear, but it didn't kind of go big enough for me. Huh. It was a little too realistic, actually. It didn't play it up as enough. And I also had higher hopes for the comedy of it. I wanted more jokes. I kind of was all right, there are some funny moments, but I wanted it to be a little more packed full of humor and jokes. I thought the casting was great. I thought everyone in it was great, but I was kind of I didn't have any really strong feelings about it. And I think that was kind of a bummer. I wanted to have strong feelings about it. And I walked out being okay, it was a fine movie. It was fine. But I will say, I then got my hair cut the next day after I saw it in a salon I hadn't been in before with a guy that cut my hair. And I'd never met him before. He started talking to me completely we weren't talking about anything about it, but he was like, "Have you seen this movie on Netflix? This Up or Look Up?" Or I was like, "Don't Look Up." And he's like, "Yeah, that's the one." I just can't stop thinking about it. And he started gushing about it and how much he loved it and how much it made him think. And he's like, I don't think I enjoyed it while I was watching it, but I haven't stopped thinking about it for days. And that's really interesting. And I want more of that. And that was interesting to me because, this was somebody who was not super online, who hadn't been immersed in all of this stuff in the way that I had. And I thought was a more interesting review than mine, which was kind of jaded and, a little too, I know the issues. I know what they're going for. Right. I felt like the comedy, I had too much judgment basically about it to really be able to watch it with an open mind. And I was very, very fascinated that this guy was so into it.
I'm pretty fascinated with any of these. I watched that first season of The Morning Show. I'm fascinated with any kind of look at television media, cable news, morning shows, all of that. I love what they did there. And then I love, anything that just takes a look at that and sees how, takes you behind the scenes to any extent, or is just a critical look or parody of cable TV. Having been a part of that for a lot of my career, and in that, I think it's such an important thing to constantly be looking at, especially those morning shows on cable TV, CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, where they try to have a snappy upper beat thing, but they're also doing news. So that's kind of a hard thing, I think, to pull off unless you're, well, I don't know. I don't really watch them, but.
I love that you ended with that. I don't really watch them, but I'm sure they're doing these things.
I used to watch,
know them well.
Good Morning, the network ones, which were even more fluffier, but I don't know, just a weird, I think those are a weird place to get your news, I suppose. The way that it's delivered and what they're trying to do mornings live, it just seems, and then on MSNBC, they're married. They're a fucking married couple. It's like, is this really serious? Like Joe and Mika, like that whole thing is bizarre to me. That's very much like that movie. It's like, you think that could never happen. No, these two are married.
Yeah, it is very weird. I don't watch those shows either, but I'm fascinated. I'm a little more interested in sort of who the audience is, who does get their news from those particular outlets. And that's the thing. I guess that was my like big takeaway from this movie, was just like, I don't, despite what I have seen from the creators who have sort of implied otherwise, I don't think I'm the audience for Don't Look Up. I think I'm already too immersed in all of these things and have a little bit too much information. And like, because of that, I think is why the satire did not hit hard enough for me. And I think that people who are not maybe living in these worlds found it meant more to them because it seemed a little more exaggerated. Whereas to me, it just seemed very like, yeah, no, this is actually how this is. Like, you're not hitting it hard enough. I don't know. In the same way, I think that like, did you ever hear like older rock musicians talk about watching Spinal Tap?
No.
For the first time? I mean, several of them were just like, yeah, no, this was like filming our life. Like, it wasn't even a comedy. It's like getting lost backstage. Like, all of that was just what we lived. And I think I had more of that kind of experience when it came to the media stuff in Don't Look Up. But I did appreciate it. It was interesting. I'm very curious to hear other people's thoughts on it.
Well, everybody's got them. It's got, I mean, such a popular movie. I also thought about, man, just the business of making movies these days and how Netflix has these huge budget films. I mean, like all those actors that are big name actors, they must have budget on a film like that. And they have all the comedians, the biggest comedians, and they're just throwing hundreds of millions of dollars just at talent alone. And it's because like it's so easy to watch those movies when they're released that way, and that so many people watch them. I guess it's worth it. They figure out, but
it must be. They're taking over the world very, very clearly.
A couple of other news items I want to ask you that have recently occurred. First of all, I know that this is the point in the interview when you were going to rip off your jersey and just leave.
Are we at 75% right now? Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely.
Football player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Neither of us are big sports people, but you tweeted this. I don't know anything about Antonio Brown, but I support everyone choosing to peace out at 75% of the way through their first day back at work this year. I mean, dude just ripped off his jersey and walked off the football field yesterday.
It looked like he ripped off more than his jersey from what I saw. Looked like, he like went all the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he just like left the game, the wide receiver for Tom Brady's football team. And I guess maybe at this point, maybe there's been people know why, but
he's been fired now. He's
no longer on the team.
No, he's been out. But I guess there's a lot going on with this guy. I saw so many I tweeted that and multiple people tweeted back like, yeah, no, he's terrible. Like news stories of like, he's a bad guy. There's rape stuff in there. It's like all terrible. But then I also saw lots of people saying this is someone who has gone through a lot of concussion and brain injury elements too. So like, I have no idea. I did not, this is my 5 seconds on Twitter getting responses. So I have no idea what to make of any of it, but it all sounds bad.
It does seem like one of those things. Like I saw recently a professional soccer player on the U.S. women's national team, like was taking a mental health break from the game, the team. And then we've seen that with like a couple tennis players. And of course, what's her name? The gymnast at the Olympics, Simone Biles. And like, it's interesting when professional athletes who are on the public stage like that, or I suppose anybody else in the public eye, says, I need a little time. I mean, I've done that. I'm just a day off. And I say, I need mental health. I can't do it today. And I do feel like we're getting into a better point of just kind of understanding and accepting that and hopefully taking it when we need it. And maybe someone could have intervened in that guy's life if he has so many issues. I mean, he's been, like you said, he's done apparently some pretty bad things, but geez, like I felt bad. Like I was like, this guy's having a nervous breakdown in front of the world. And that made me feel sad. I felt, but
I mean, I don't know what he was going through. But the concussion stuff, or the brain injury stuff is real and terrifying. And really, I used to watch a lot of football, and I used to like have a team and do all that, and I can't do it anymore because it just feels too awful. It's the same way I never liked watching like boxing or anything like that. I don't want to see people destroy themselves.
Every time I think about the brain injuries and the concussions, I think about Aaron Rodgers not wanting to get the vaccine because he's worried about long-term issues. It's like
my dad played football in college. He went on a college scholarship, and this was a long time ago. It was not quite as hardcore as it is now, really, like in terms of the hits that these guys were taking. But I mean, he can't bend 3 of his fingers my whole life. He's like kind of hook handy claw from playing football. I mean, it's some really minor dumb thing, but he cannot unbend them, I should say. They're just like constantly bent in, along with a host of other physical ailments that just, stay with him the rest of his life that I mostly don't hear about. But that one was very visual, so I always knew it. So yeah, there's a lot of long-term effects that football seems to leave these players with. Some are seen, a lot are unseen, and are very traumatic.
All right, just 2 randoms before I get to the next thing, and they are your tweets. I like this one. I think this is a really good tip. Little life tip: get a king size bed, so there will always be room for you, no matter how much unfolded laundry you have piled on it. I think that people don't think about that enough when they're looking at bed size, and I think you make a strong point. And I think you should have to probably share a photo of what it looks like. But
I've created a laundry boyfriend that just sort of sleeps next to me, like very comforting.
Is he? What are his
warm figure?
But he's not perfect, right? I mean, he's probably got some drawbacks.
Oh, absolutely not. No, he gets snappy at points, and he zips up and down. It's like there's some problems, definitely, but he gets a little too button up. But like we work through it.
Can't get some of those stains out either. They just never, no matter how many times you wash them, he just won't change.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
How much longer should we go on this?
A lot of wrinkles too. I don't know. We could do a bunch. We could do a bunch, I'm sure. But he doesn't complain, and so I like him a lot. Because
if he does, that's what the hamper is for. He
absolutely
might get put away.
Things can get real heated.
Do you have any thoughts? I should have asked you before and put you on the spot, but Betty White, I mean, like when that was just sucked because it was the day before the last day year, and she was 99. She was about to be 100, and there's like all these things that were dedicated to her 100, and I don't know what happened to her, but so that was sad. And there was
I think she got old is what happened to her, Pete. Like there is a point at which you just die.
No, there was some reporting that she was bungee jumping.
Oh, okay. I don't remember hearing that one. You must have insider scoops there.
I was on Parler.
What happened to her? Just, humans, they just expire. There's just like a point in time where it's just like God goes, throw that one in the trash. It has a date
come
on it.
on.
Pass by.
She was like giving interviews and stuff. She was tweeting like days before.
I know. Isn't that perfect? Who doesn't want that? That's exactly what we all want. Just to be like, yeah, I'm doing great. I can like tap dance and like make jokes and stuff. And then I go to sleep and don't wake up. Great. Done.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, she's amazing because like that was the same day that the People cover came out celebrating her 100th birthday. It was on the 31st. Everyone was like sharing that.
That's what I thought.
Has that kind of comic timing? That's amazing. That's incredible. She was just like, this is the funniest day for me to die. And it was. I am just in awe. That's genius.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good analysis. Now I'm glad I asked you about it. Also wanted to ask you what you thought of the news that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's Twitter account has been suspended. Twitter permanently suspended her because I guess she violated their policy on coronavirus misinformation one too many times. Twitter said that she had a 5th strike, which meant her account will not be restored. Thoughts?
Well, my first thought is it's 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. You can't do 5th strike. Use a different term. Come on. Anyway, that's maybe pedantic, but it's annoying. My second thought is, why can't humanity suspend her? Like, we're not going far enough here. Like, that's great, but can we find a way to just quiet her in all ways? That would work for me. It's very frustrating to have to ever hear her.
I think Twitter is such an effective tool to get any message out, and it creates a lot of opportunity for folks, some of which, have very few followers, but maybe somebody with a big following gives them a boost. But in this case, huge following, constantly tweeting and putting things out there. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Trump being deplatformed off Twitter and everywhere else mattered. I think this matters. I think that, sure, there's a backlash, and sure, it's not perfect, but I think this is a huge thing, and I'm happy about it when it happens in cases like this.
Deplatforming absolutely can be very effective. I wish it were a little bit more effective, really, but I think it is a good step. I'm glad to see it. Cheers. I'm not going to be pouring any out on the curb for her.
Right.
No loss there.
Like, but I mean, some will argue it makes him a martyr and makes him more powerful or influential or something.
I understand that argument, but it doesn't at this moment in time. It doesn't work. We've seen enough times. We watched Milo, that guy. He's now like,
oh yeah,
he was the sort of white supremacist-y
formerly gay
guy, right? I mean, he's like hawking stuff on QVC or on like a QVC.
It's a great no. I think that's a great example. That guy was a master of social media, had a huge following, and now where is he? Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, I think Trump still has a tremendous amount of influence. I don't think that not being on Twitter has, erased the harm of him. But I think as many places as we can kick these people out of, that's a good thing.
This week is of course, the anniversary of January 6th, the insurrection. And where were you? And how did you experience it? And what do you think about where we're at a year later?
I mean, I was at the Capitol, but I mean, I was just there to like hang out. I just heard it was going to be a party, man. Like, I don't know. I wasn't expecting. No, I was not at the Capitol. I was just sitting here on my couch, probably. I don't know where I was, but I know there's a lot. I will say a lot of activists and organizers are planning some work to draw attention to January 6th. So if anybody is looking to get involved there, I will try and find some stuff and share it on Twitter so that people can partake, because I know there's a lot of frustration that more has not been done to really hold people accountable for what happened there. And so there are some stuff in the works to try and draw more attention to that. I personally am not sure what I feel. I mean, it's all terrible and awful. It's just like there's so much else that I'm kind of focused on that, like, I'm glad other people are thinking about that, I guess, is where it comes down.
Fair enough. Let's talk about what you are focused on, and then I'll let you go about your life, which is, what may or may not happen in Congress, specifically in the Senate. Of course, you're following all of that all the time. And so, what are you thinking? What are you hearing? And how are you strategizing for this year and the next, I think, probably the first quarter to begin with, in terms of getting something passed through Congress?
Yeah, we all had high hopes that Build Back Better was going to be done and we could all start pushing on the next stuff. And here we are still working on that. And that is a very frustrating situation to be in. Joe Manchin, I know, just came out with some comments that he might be open to including some more of the climate stuff. Maybe that's maybe he watched Don't Look Up over Christmas. I'm not sure. Maybe that's what happened. And if so, it's a great movie. But
sure.
He's suddenly potentially open to some of that. Of course, who the hell knows with that guy is what it comes down to. I mean, the fact that we all have to spend more time screaming at Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, he made last year about him. He's going to make this year about him. And if he gets on board, then we've got to scream at Kristen Sinema, most likely. So the more of same situation is incredibly infuriating and frustrating, but we still have that. The only thing I will say is we are still in a place where there is the opportunity to potentially include some more tax fairness provisions in the bill that are not currently there. And one of those is still the billionaire's income tax. And there was a piece that came out in the Washington Post on Christmas Eve, I guess it was, that highlighted that Joe Manchin actually indicated he is open to including the billionaire's income tax, possibly to raise revenues for some additional programs. So it's, it's still limping along. It could still make it. So we're not giving up hope on that yet. And we're going to try and work really hard on pushing other senators to really get on board with that, because that would be a major win. We keep thinking it's gone for right now, but it keeps coming back. So,
well, you're following it closely, and if you think those possibilities still exist, that's awesome. AmericansForTaxFairness.org is where Maura is now the campaign director, of course. So, awesome organization, support her work there, and hopefully, maybe we could get that tax passed. That would be pretty amazing. We'll see. And then, of course,
I've been going through it like it's Princess Bride, basically, every time. It's not dead, it's
right.
It's mostly dead,
right.
Which means it's still a little bit alive.
And it's a midterm election year as well, right? So there's going to be a lot of campaigning around.
Oh, come on, Pete. We just started the year.
Sorry.
Yes.
Another tweet from you on New Year's Day. Happy New Year to everyone still in bed, trapped under the weight of everything they promised they'd deal with in January. I mean, that's hilarious. Can we just, though, give ourselves, I still feel like we need to, just going back to us one more time, give ourselves a break this month, given that we are not even at, in most parts of the country, the peak of this fourth and hopefully final wave of this variant of COVID. And January just seems like it's on hold. The beginning of the year just seems like it's on hold because so many people will be getting sick, can't fly. Maybe your kids can't go to school because the teachers can't. Everything just seems to be, again, unpaused to some extent. Do we just acknowledge that?
No, that's absolutely true. I would like everyone to come together. I'd like to start a thing where it's the new year. Let's all agree that if you didn't open an email in 2021, it's just wiped out. It's gone. You don't have to do it anymore. If you opened it and you already read it, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But if it's unopened, sitting in your inbox, and you've been afraid to open it for maybe it's been a couple of days, maybe it's been 9 months, it no longer exists. If we all agree together, we could make this happen.
That is hilarious. I have so much anxiety when you just I know there's so many people that listen to the show who have emailed me such thoughtful and important things I need to get back to. I can't. I don't think I can go there, but I want to, because I have 4 million unopened messages. So it's I
know, it's terrifying.
Overwhelming.
It's looming over all of our heads. I know we are all doing it.
That is.
Let's just wipe it clean.
Do you have an email system of any sort? Of sorting, of prioritizing, of foldering, of getting back to, of flagging? I have nothing.
I have my email system is basically if I know I'm not going to be able to respond to it, I don't open it, because once it's opened, I just won't return to it.
Right.
Which means I have a ton of unopened emails that sit there forever. And then every couple of months or so, I scroll back through, and ones that are absolutely no longer relevant, sometimes I just kind of delete without ever looking at. That's my big system. That's it, basically. Unopened means I really still have to deal with this, but haven't had time. And then, I'm basically just hoping that the time will pass and it'll, everyone will kind of forget that happened, and I can just, move on with my life. And
yes, so I love it. I love it. I appreciate you making the rest of us feel human and validated for struggling with this issue. All right, my friend. So great, as always. I really appreciate you so much, and I look forward to more of our chats. I know so many other people do right here in 2022. We always have that. We can always look forward to those.
We do. Happy New Year's.
You too.
Stand
All right, everybody. Well, that is the first show of the new year, even though I didn't quite know that at the beginning of my conversation with Maura. And I thank you very much for listening and for supporting. Thank you to Dr. Arthur Caplan. Thank you to everybody who pays for a subscription to the podcast. StandUpWithPete.com, Patreon.com/Pete Dominic if you don't. And looking forward to hearing from you as always. Join us on the Discord platform anytime you want. If you're a community member, you're never alone because you can always hang out there, as well as our Thursday night hangouts, 8 p.m. Thursday. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to play my conversation with Peter Coyote, which I did on New Year's Day. It was really great, and he's expected to join us at one of those hangouts, by the way. So that's all I've got for you today, and John Carroll taking us out right now with our song.
When you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand